welcome back, everyone. This is the Refresh Point. My name is Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my constant co-host, Steve. How's it going?
You know what? Had a pretty decent week. Got a workout in. Now we're ready to talk some Weiss.
Ready to talk some Weiss. We're back from the Houston Regional, and unfortunately, we did not win.
No, we didn't win, but it turns out the majority of the teams that go do not win.
Yeah.
So we have good company.
We had some good company. We actually ended up 10th in Swiss, so not bad, all things considered. Dropped 2 losses, had like a weird thing where we paired up into the undefeated in round 5, and then paired down into an X2 in round, or an X3 in round 6, so that was fun.
I think it's difficult to get through a whole tournament without some weird stuff happening. Certainly didn't do a whole lot of favors to our strength of schedule when you get that kind of weirdness. But if you get the pair up and then you get the pair down, can you really complain? I mean, you weren't supposed to have the pair up. So,
true.
Yeah,
that's life.
It is what it is. We're happy for the good results that we had, and we're ready to start thinking about a little bit of downtime.
Yeah. And so also today, we'll have some ambitious deck building and a discussion of different kinds of formats for play after you've taken all those Springfest L's. So shuffle your decks, tap or cut, and we'll get right into the refresh point with some breaking news. As we said, Houston and France and the Philippines all happened in our time away.
Yeah, Houston was huge. I mean, 60 teams. I think that's the biggest team event I've been to in the Houston area. So that's really nice to see. Love to see big Weiss events. Bodes well for fall, where we should be having some pretty big events. So. And then, we have France and the Philippines with some interesting results.
Yeah, interesting. We could talk about that in the Spike Corner as well. Hi to everybody listening that also went to Houston. It was great to see a bunch of y'all, go with a bunch of y'all. Fight a bunch of y'all,
Yeah, there was a pre-event on Saturday before the actual Springfest, and that is the very first time that anyone has ever come up to me and said, "Hey, I listened to your podcast." So that was nice. That was a nice feeling. So thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast, and you'll know me from this point on, since I'll always have my refresh point mat. And we're going to have some other refresh point stuff.
You got to get me that.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, we're going to make even better ones. That's the prototype. By the time fall rolls around, you'll know. We'll
talk about that in a sec. Also, you can copy and paste my excitement from last time about the spring conference announcement and all of the non-announcements that were present inside of it.
It wasn't much. It was kind of nothing.
You could cut out that part where I was excited about an English exclusive, because there wasn't one announced.
Yeah, I think the schedule is looking pretty full for a while. So
yeah, that's fair, because we do have a lot of sets incoming, not exactly having a release date, but still like. We have
release dates that are packing things in until about August. So
and then we have enough sets after that to just kind of fill it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And 2 English exclusives. We've got Avatar, which is in mid spoiler right now. And then of course Guilty Gear Strive. So,
and they couldn't do me the courtesy of giving me a release date. They were like, you get it in winter. So near guarantee that you can't play it in any regional, but that's
I'll have to save it for next spring. But
if I just qual the Worlds, I could rock up to Worlds.
There you go.
Guilty Gear.
Exactly. So I mean, very easy to do. Happens all the time. Just do that.
Right. But yeah, that was a kind of a nothing burger. But speaking of regionals, it's time to dive into the Spike Corner.
As we frequently do.
We
love the Spike Corner.
Yeah, we like to play a little competitive Weiss here and there, and it turns out it's been a regional season, and so the time has been ripe for spiking.
Yeah, and people who've been with us since the very beginning, I think we've done Spike Corner every single week, but going forward...
Was there one?
I think maybe...
There might have been one.
But going forward, we might take some weeks off the Spike Corner. We're in that lull, that mid-season lull. You hit the summer, it's you're fresh off the Springfest. You're starting to relax a little bit before you start to get into the really tense part of the season, which is the fall season. So, now's really the time to rest, recuperate, play a little more casually. But let's talk about one last Springfest, just for old times' sake.
One last few Springfests,
yeah.
Just for old times' sake.
Yeah.
We went to one, as we alluded to earlier, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Texas doesn't defend its home turf yet again.
Yeah.
We got four teams in the top 8. 2 Austin teams, 2 Dallas, so it would have been 5, I think. Because there was a Houston team, Riaz's team. There were 2 Austin teams.
Were there?
I thought.
I don't think so.
Maybe it was at least 1.
I think it was 3 in the top 8.
I'm pretty sure there was an Austin team. Oh wait, 3 Austin teams?
No, 3 total Texas teams in top.
No, because there was an Austin team because Mason was cheering them on in the background.
Okay. Sure. But yeah, by the end of top 4, it was 1.
1. Yeah. Texas team. Yeah.
Well, what I'll say is that the Houston Regional has a tendency to bring out the very good players from all over the U.S. because they know that it's going to be heavily populated with good players, and there's nothing good players want to face more than good players. So, congrats to the teams that did really, really well, and congrats to the teams that won. But,
shout out to our homies from Dallas that got 3rd with a team that was cobbled together by, I think, somebody that you played with last spring, and then 2 other players that took him in.
Yeah. He was none too shy to let me know. So I'll take at least partial credit for the motivation that led to that top. So
there you go.
But you'll see, we're starting to see a departure from the Nino Escanor and something.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, Escanor's not going anywhere. But Nino kind of didn't show up very much in Houston. I mean, there's a little, but or I guess didn't really cut into the top 2.
Yeah.
So we're still seeing all the usual suspects.
There was more slime, which was fun.
Yeah, I think people like slime as a general answer to most matchups. Doesn't die very easily, and can create board states that are extremely difficult to overcome.
Yeah, there was even an 8 standby slime, just for fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You gotta get your eyes checked, man. Come on. You need new glasses over there? Yeah, it was pretty recently updated, but there was an 8-buy slime list in the Top Cut for Houston. It was on the same team as that 8-bar layer list that I know you're such a fan of.
Yeah, I had to do quite a bit of research on the layer build because I don't think I've ever seen it at any point in the entire time that Bang Dream's been out. So, the build is pretty reasonable. Looks like the type of deck that works really well before Alice shows up in the meta. We have a level 1 on reverse combo that lets us, check 4 and add 1, and then we can give power, and then you can kind of snowball it into the strongest lane. And then, Choo Choo and Pareo, as we all know, is a very, very standard mid-game for a lot of Bang Dream decks. And then we have a finisher. It's like ditch 2 to burn 2, and then you can look at the top of your opponent's deck, and then you can manipulate it. It's like a Mocha for 1, sort of.
Right.
So overall, nothing unreasonable about the deck at all. It's got a very unique accelerate healer where it's a 1/1, and then when you accelerate, you can pay 1 if you have 4 or more cards in the clock, and you can heal it. So that makes your accelerate mechanics a lot more efficient, which is very nice.
Yeah, instead of heal, pay an extra 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so it lets you mitigate some of the risks of accelerating, but overall, very reasonable deck. Nothing super shocking here. So
and even on that point, I think it lines up with the idea that you brought up, where you want to diversify where your costs are going throughout the game and in your finisher, right? The finisher is like a ditch 2. And then, in comparison throughout the game, you have this accelerate heal that's paying up stock. You're playing Chu-2 and Pareo, which is taking up more stock. And so when you get to the end game, you don't want to have that too much stock to try to get off as many finishers as you can.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it's a very balanced build. Looks very reasonable. Just because I've never seen it doesn't make it bad. And it's a quintessential Springfest deck where you just never quite know what's going to do well where. So we see more Danmachi showing up in the top 8 here. 2 Danmachi decks in top 4. That's probably a bit aberrant from the other results we've looked at. So overall, very reasonable set of decks. So,
and the winning team had Killua, Kevin, along with Olive and
Nico.
God, I couldn't remember it. But had those 3 piloting Escanor, Slime, and Christmas Kasumi with the anniversary Kasumi finisher, beating Clinton with his own list for a good meme. Yeah.
I faced a deck very similar to this in the pre-tournament, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a tremendous Christmas Kasumi fan at this stage of the game. I think there are other combos that look better on paper. The brainstorm that comes from something in the warehouse can be extremely awkward at times, where it's gonna brainstorm 3, and because
for the uninitiated, what is the Christmas Kasumi combo?
So, it revolves around an event called Something in the Warehouse, which is a brainstorm for 3, and then you get to salvage an X or lower level character, where X is the number of music characters or Asuka characters revealed by the brainstorm 3. So, Christmas Kasumi, which is the 1/0, twice per turn when you play another character with music, she gets 1,000 power. And then on attack, you can salvage the Something in the Warehouse. So the ideal play loop is spam Something in the Warehouse, then put Kasumi down, then put them all back in your hand, then repeat ad nauseum. Very similar to how you see torch combos used nowadays. Only Something in the Warehouse is a little awkward because 1, it's a brainstorm. It has the possibility of leaving climaxes out of the deck. 2, it's always 3 cards. Maybe you don't want it to be 3 cards, but it's gonna be. And the other thing is that this deck is moving towards more events, right? They're running the Kasumi anti-event, anti-souls event. Mm-hmm. And so the more events you add to this thing, the greater the possibility that it's not going to be able to pick up level 3s. If we're talking 4 Something in the Warehouse, 3 minus souls event, 2 bunts for luck, and then 8 climaxes. We're talking about nearly 20, that's 19 cards that will cause your Something in the Warehouse to whiff. So you are going to have to use your selectivity, whatever selectivity exists in the build, you're going to have to use that to pick up 3s. Because it's very likely that you will not be able to pick up 3s with Something in the Warehouse. That being said, Kasumi has a tendency to lead into more costumes, just like many other finishers that are drawing and ditching and top stocking or checking 3 or whatever. The more you get into the deck, the more chances you're going to start duping it. But the other thing that was kind of unique about the build is you see they were running this Tai bomb that's like pay 1 when it attacks. Has a front attack. It can give an opponent's character -1 level, and then it's a level 1 bomb. That card you'll probably see a lot more of going forward because of Alice and the implications in those builds. Here, there's a couple of niche ways you could use it to remove some problematic level 2 characters that maybe you can't get over. But this is kind of all the usual suspects for popping party with the Christmas combo. So it's reasonable and it's lasted forever. But I just can't help but think that that the Yukina combo will yield better outcomes, especially going forward.
Yeah. And moving on from Houston, there was the Philippines regional before, actually. We're going to double back a bit. We'll get back to France. All right. But there was a Philippines regional, which, if you looked at it, you might think to yourself, some of these lists are kind of old.
Yeah. So you see, like, SAO 8 wind.
You see Yuki Sinon.
Yeah.
Some of these lists are old.
Yeah, Yuki Sinon in the top 8. Dal 8 by, which we actually saw a lot more of than I thought there would be. And then, so yeah, there's a Goblin Slayer, like standby Goblin Slayer. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Some of these builds are a little bit on the old side, and there's a good reason for that.
And so the question I'm going to pose to you for conversation about this regional in particular is, one of their community members went out into, I think, the English Weiss channel in the Weiss Discord and said that, hey, the top cut looks a little funky, but that's partially because availability of product is not that great. There's people that will buy a lot of product but won't let go of playsets or low rarity stuff, and so a lot of people will just end up playing the same old lists that they've had, which brings to mind the question of, if you're in this environment, how do you think that really shapes your deck list and how you play, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate because it sounds like some of this is solvable and some of it is a bit more systemic. Obviously, we can't dig into all the reasons why this sort of thing happens because there are many, and it kind of goes outside the scope of our
yeah, we don't know anything about... To be clear, I just saw like a few messages on the Discord. We don't know really anything about the Philippines.
Yeah,
metagame, but
yeah, we do know that it is that they did vocalize that it is difficult to get product, and so in the face of that, it does make your choices hard, because some decks have such linchpin pieces that they can't operate without them. It's the Escanor build is very specific, and for example, and without all the pieces that go with it, it becomes much, much worse. So even if you had 2/3 of the deck, you might see worse outcomes than if you had 100% of a deck from 2019.
Right, because theoretically, let's say you got your hands on some set 2 product, but now with the ban list, you're missing the set 1 King Climax Swapper. Which is just like, oh, well, now I can't rearrange super easily and then swap into my climax, and so that kills a little consistency with your end game, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, or maybe you only could get 2 Escanors, or other double Rs that the deck needs, and that all plays in. And so when you see this sort of results, there's a reason, and so thanks to that player who helped explain that, because it's important for context. because people who don't know will just meme on the Philippines or meme on those players, and that's not right. There's legitimate logistical challenge in play. And then the other thing is, it seems that they don't have like a super consistent tournament scene, so they may not even be getting exposed to some of this stuff. Like if you don't ever see these decks, how are you going to know how much better they are than what you're currently piloting? Because if you've made an investment in a Weiss deck that you've been piloting and you've become quite proficient at over years, if somebody just says, okay, well, this deck's really good, it might be difficult for you to get the context of how much better it is than what you're currently piloting without actually seeing it. So, it's kind of a tough situation because there's some legitimate logistic issues that are making it really hard for some of those players, and the fact that they're still persisting, putting together a pretty nice tournament, all things considered, for the number of players. Hats off to them. That they're clearly very passionate about the game, and that should be commended.
Absolutely. And finally, back to more close to the present day, there's the France regional. Same weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the logistics of where this is located. I know I've seen the European player base vocalize that some of their tournaments are held in pretty difficult to reach locations. I know one of our locals went to one of the regionals in Germany last year and was complaining a bit about like how difficult it was to get to, how difficult it was to find accommodations, one of those type of things. And I think that directly drives some of the attendance issues you see at some of these events. So I don't think that there's a massive gap between the size of the player base so much as it is, if they hold the event in a place that's awkward to get to, or expensive to get to, then that's going to deter players from attending. Mm-hmm. But you kind of see the same sort of, you see all the familiar faces, except for there's a Love Live Sunshine 2-soul deck here.
Is it playing the Shioko?
No, there's enough 2 souls in Love Live Sunshine for everybody. But it's not over surprising to see that sort of deck here because you have a relatively small tournament, so you're not gonna get that many rounds of Swiss. And Sunshine has always been the type of deck that can just absolutely assassinate you, and so it's paired with 2 other more meta decks, Kanata Marine and 8 Standby Nino. And so those are two deck. We got an Anchor basically in the Nino deck, and then we have some high roll. So it's always possible that you could just high roll the crap out of your opponent, and the smaller the tournament is, the more likely it is that you can do it repeatedly. So that's not super surprising to see. If you look at the top 4, you'll see a lot of dual laners, Love Live Sunshine, like the type of deck that can really high roll on you.
And the last thing I want to cover today on the Spy Corner is a choice between 2 Hololive roads. We have the thing that you've already played a bunch, that you played the Springfest, which is Okayu Sora Marine, and another list that's popped up a few times, and one of our locals even experimented with, and I think played with, was Okayu Kanada Marine. Just more advantage smile.
Yeah, so you're basically abandoning the minus souls game plan for a more ambitious game plan where you try to execute the Kanata engine inside of that show with a better level 1 game. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this strategy. It does give you access to yellow, which is a big deal against some matchups where you just get compressed down on. So a lot of times the losses I've taken with the Sora deck have been due to the fact that my opponent creates a game state that I can't deal damage. So it happens with Slime, it happens with SDS, where they forsake the board completely and just start compressing hard. And they're leaving nothing but open lanes for me to hit into. And so I'm hitting for 4, which is unlikely to land, and then they're deck fixing on the back end and compressing even harder so that they build just an absolutely tremendous lead, and then it becomes very hard for me to win. Right. So getting access to yellow gives you the fear that you can stock swap them and hurt them badly if they try to use that sort of strategy. So there's that. But it leans into two very the Kanata game plan takes a lot of cards to execute correctly. So it is a bit more risky, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And for that'll be the Spike Corner. And now, from a few different decks, let's go into something that's a little less proven and meta present. We did get announced in that kind of Nothing Burger announcement, and also on Twitter before, that we're getting Revue Starlight Set 3, the movie set, which comes with a very interesting proposition of, I remember the Set 1 Kariko finisher. Can I make that work?
I think that was the only finisher from Set 1 that anybody tried to make work. And if you actually are interested in Revue Starlight and playing Revue Starlight and have been playing it for the entire time that it's been around, this podcast is really going to be working out for you.
I don't know about that. You know what? If you're a longtime Kariko Futaba fan, then maybe, it's working out for you. Because I'm not touching any of the Karen, Hikari, double door combo, pants combo, very normal fair white shenanigans, and you get all this setup and you get about 8 packets of damage. It's pretty nice, sure. But what if I just stand by it and I got out this finisher that fields a board of 3/2s that has on damage burn 2 twice for 3 of them?
Yeah, I mean, on damage cancel is one of the more dangerous mechanics in Weiss.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that is where this list idea comes in. We're combining the Set 3 Futaba Standby combo with the Set 1 Kaoruko Win finisher to try to generate some results.
Okay, so the Standby combo is going to come in with the movie set.
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to come in with the movie set, and now I, the fool, bought both Set 2 and 3 in JP. And so now, I'm just playtesting it. We're getting ready.
Is there anything from Set 2 that this deck is going to use?
Nearly nothing. And here's why. It's because Set 2 is based around Relive, the mobile game, which said, here's 3 or 4 other schools of girls, and they're all gonna factor into the set now. So the original school of girls is a very muted presence in the second set. But in the third set, the movie, it's the sequel to the original anime. That's just that's all the main girls. So that's where all the new stuff is coming in.
This sounds very reminiscent of Meiji Record, where there's the Madoka Magica set, then they put out a Madoka Magica set 2. Then they're like, here's a set with a whole bunch of other characters that are definitely not from set 1 or 2. And then the fourth set was, okay, jam everybody in, all the original characters and all the other characters, get them all in there.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. So, previously, there was an idea where you might choose to use the Set 1 Standby combo to just try to do the same idea, but that one was bad and didn't generate any advantage for the most part. And so it was not great. But now in Set 3, we have this Standby. It's on a Futaba.
That helps.
So you can ditch her for the cost of the finisher.
Right.
Nice. The standby target, a 2/2 Futaba, can also be ditched for the finisher. Nice. And the combo says this. On attack, discard the climax, discard a card, search 2.
There's been a lot worse standby combos than that.
Yeah.
A lot worse.
Yeah. And so, essentially, one stock costless Yuki. And a standby. Inherent, obviously. So...
I don't hate it.
I've been playing with it. I was a hater. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was a big hater. I tried the choice combo first, which was on a Nana. It's just on attack salvage, but the problem with that one was you couldn't loop it that well.
It becomes a situation where you play two of them. You try to get one in the waiting room, and then maybe you can kind of finagle it, but. Looping level 1 combos that try to salvage, it can be awkward.
It was that, and it didn't, because you want to stand, or, what is it? It doesn't contest board that well. The 1-0s by itself was always going to be, a 5k on attack salvage. And then you were like, okay, well now I need to use all of my resources on generating a board so I can swing 3 times and play this early play healer that is now a 2 stock down. It's not a stock healer, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And so when playing with the choice combo, it was just like, okay, well, I can't afford this finisher. It's all on climax play. Why don't I just stand by it out?
I mean, tripping off the cost of buying the character does make tripling more possible.
Right.
So, and it being in Futaba, the original problem with this combo when the set first came out, as I recall, was that there were not enough Futaba and Kaoruko characters that were any good to be able to actually discard some to use the combo. But now it seems like there's an absolute truckload of them, so...
Yeah, we got a few, turns out.
Shouldn't be a problem now.
Yeah. We got this free runner that's a 3k? If you have 5 or more hand?
I mean, that's the type of plus I can get behind. It's very difficult to handle a character like that.
It's I like that. There's an on reverse, check 3. It's a 0, check 3, add a character, discard. Great for discarding all these standby targets in our hand.
Yeah, I think a big part of what allows standby decks to be sustainable is you need some waiting room flood, and the cheaper it is, the better it is. So ideally, this is why Cowgirl is so good.
Yeah.
Is because we get twice the hand fixing basically, but on reverse mill 3 for free is probably the next best thing in terms of it doesn't have to do anything if you don't want it to, but if you do want it to, it's pretty nice to switch something in your hand for something that just showed up. So I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah. And there's also a thing where there's I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, the on Death Akatsuki for the set. Nice. We get a new one in set 3 where she's like, alright, on play, mill 1. If we hit a soul trigger, just give that soul to somebody.
Yeah, so bonus souls is huge for standby decks in general. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this card seems extremely reasonable. And
what if we milled 5?
Yeah.
Free?
Yeah, milling 5 and getting +1 souls is never gonna be too bad.
Right.
Alright, so what do we do in the mid game? How do we transition from what is admittedly some kind of mediocre standby targets? How do we transition that?
We're gonna take that 2/2 we standbyed at level 1. We're gonna move that forward. We're gonna jam 2 other guys. Ideally, a second standby combo. We ideally have a second standby in our hand. We're gonna slam that garbage and get our finisher on the back row. And then we're gonna swing. We do have an early play healer that you can play. It's a 2 or less. If you direct attack and you have... So there's a package that... There's a 0/0 that searches or salvages for a set 1 3/2 Futaba and sends it into memory. And if that's in memory, you can play this early play healer that on direct attack sends to stock and just is an 11k no matter what if you have this card in memory.
So,
and I think for me that's actually the most contentious part about this whole shtick for me right now is this, because I'm just not sure of the value on it.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. I think that the nature of the game now demands that you have an early play healer. And here's why. Because there are a lot of finishers that can kill you very easily from 2-5 or 2-6. And even more so than that, there are an equal number of finishers that cannot win if their opponent is that far away. Mm-hmm. So you need a strategy to employ in those situations where either you know you can't kill, or you know that your opponent absolutely is going to on their next turn. And that's the situation where the early play healer is shining the brightest. Obviously, stepping on your opponent when you're way ahead by early play healing all of his damage from the previous turn is also a thing, but it's a lot less critical than this first case, where you know you're coming into range for Itsuki, Escanor, Gura upcoming.
And it might just be 1 point away from lethal. And
right.
If you take that away,
you live.
That's all you need.
Yeah. And so there's nothing that feels quite worse in Weiss than not getting to actually execute your game plan at the end game and just dying before it ever happens. With like a handful of cards and a whole bunch of stock and just being like, well, I thought I was going to get it, but then I died.
Right.
So early play healing mitigates that in the best way possible. So I think you need an early play healer no matter how you do it. Now, whether it's this one or not is some contention. What I like about it in this particular list, and we will have the list on the YouTube so that you two can see and attempt some ambitious play.
I'm not going to 6 locals a week anymore. So I'll have a day where, for all the YouTube frogs, we've got the cards on screen. I have it this time. I did it. I've done it this time for sure. You'll see it. You've been seeing it this whole time, technically. And now you're acknowledging it. It's back. Here to stay. Just follow along.
So, there are counters in this deck. We have a
right.
1-0, 2500 counter. It needs to resonate the 3.
Right.
The finisher, which is slightly awkward, but in return we get 500 more power. So
1000 more power because it's a 1/5 base.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but I meant over the standard backup, right?
Yeah.
Standard 1-0 backup's 2k. Mm-hmm. So our resonate is going to value us 500, or it's going to demerit us 500. Mm-hmm. So we take those. And so 11 countering to 12-5, or to, 13-5 is pretty big. And you want this thing to get lanes, because every time it direct attacks, it cashes you in, and you mitigate the cost of playing it in the first place. So I'll be honest, I kind of like it. I
do like it, and I think what it has been is just been, very light playtesting so far. We've only been back in Houston for like a week.
Right.
And so it's just...
there are a lot of things that don't feel good or don't look good after 5 games that will feel or look good after 20.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just been hitting those scenarios where you get sent to like 2-3, 2-4, you know you're going to hit 3 the next turn. It's like...
And you don't have the money.
I just want to have the sauce.
Yeah.
This healer in my hand, it could be a healer or a ditch target for a triple Karuko.
Right.
So... Or it could be my heal down at level 3 if necessary. And so it's that kind of feeling that in the initial playtesting where it's like, maybe I want the stock healer from set 2 instead.
Sure.
It's a red, 4 or more, early play stock healer.
Yeah, I mean, and the colors support it. It's not on character, so that's a little awkward, but
right.
Otherwise fine. So
but
what
the bigger question with that though is if you take out this specific early play healer, you can remove the pieces around it.
Right, you free the memory.
You free the 2 memory targets, which are technically optional off finishers, but not really. Not ideally. You don't really want to be playing this card.
Right.
If you can, because it's a burn 1 on attack.
Pay 1, ditch 1?
Pay 1, ditch 1. And you need the finisher in the middle position.
Yeah, which I mean, you're
gonna have it, but it's
it.
like, I like this other guy better. This one that says on reverse burn 3.
All right, so let's talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
Let's talk about what our ideal end state is.
Right. Because I was unimaginative, my initial thought was like, I don't think triple is really possible.
Right.
Let's go with double and this off finisher Cloudine that says, on play, draw, and then check your triggers, which, nice. For our hand cost, love drawing.
Right.
Check your triggers, on attack, gain 3k, because we need that power to reverse.
Right.
It's on reverse, pay 2, ditch 2, so we kind of need a primo of hand to get double finisher and this.
Right.
Burn 3.
Right. So it's not that bad. She replaces herself with her draw ability.
Yeah.
And we can see how bad it's going to be in terms of like, are we about to trigger a climax? We do have no pluses. So plussing off climaxes is not really a thing.
Exactly.
So that does make it more awkward. So basically we need 2 cards for her ditch, and then we need however many Kauriko ditches that we're going to have.
Yeah, we need 2, 1 for each finisher.
Right.
We need 2 to ditch for the Claudine.
Right.
And then that assumes...
And then the guys themselves,
let's assume we stand by 1.
Right. We need 2, probably.
Because we need 2 of these finishers. Let's assume we stand by 1, so we have the 4 ditch, 1 off finisher in hand, 1 finisher, 1 climax, 7 cards.
Right. And that is a little bit of an ask. Not a huge ask, but an ask.
It can be an ask, and especially sometimes you might end up stand-buying the Claudine, but because you can't stand by a finisher.
Right.
But that also means that you can't get the draw off of playing that.
Right.
And so that can make things a little awkward.
Yeah, I agree. There is some hand problems there, especially considering we don't no plussing climaxes means basically you have to have it before you get into the attack step, or you're not gonna.
But
all right, so
in recent playtimes, I've discovered triple. It's not that big out of the picture. We can get there.
Yeah. So triple would require 7 stock, which if you stand by 1, which is possible.
Right.
Definitely not out of the realm of possibility. And then you will need a pretty full hand, which again is possible.
About the same hand. Though.
Yeah, just about.
Because you
instead
just
of ditching 2, you ditch 1, but it's 3 instead of 2. So yeah, it's basically the same hand, and you know, around the same money,
right?
To get it all, and so we get a huge cash in if we get it all.
Dude, we get a massive cash in.
Right. So let's talk about the finisher, how good it is, the reason we would even attempt this in the first place.
All right. Finisher says, on play of climax, pay 1, discard Futaba or Kauriko, and give the other characters on your board on cancel.
That's on climax play, right?
Yes.
Okay. Does it do anything on play?
Bounce.
Okay. So.
Bounce an enemy character.
Bounce an enemy character is huge.
Hey, Berkuli? Goodbye.
Well, and there are so many applications for that now and in the future. We're talking about opposition by the shield, the Kasumi combo, which will totally neuter this combo. We're talking about the 8 standby Overlord. We're talking about possibly Chainsaw Man in the future. All the negative counterplay, all the tap counters, all the everything, just no.
Get out of here.
So, and we have an on-damage cancel finisher here. So hitting for 4 or 5 is absolutely what we want. We want to cancel because we're going to start snowballing them with packets of damage. So, the combo is pay 1, ditch a Futaba or Kauriko, And all of our other characters, not her, but the other two, get on cancel burn 2.
Yes.
So, we pass that to 2 characters. We basically get on cancel burn 2 twice. It's just in 2 different characters.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have 2 of these, we now have a potential for 7 packets. If we get 2 cancels, 2 of the right cancels. And if you have 3 of these, you're going to get 9 packets, which is just an absolute shit ton of damage.
I got it off like 2 days ago at Cardhaven. Dude. Like, I was looking at my hand and I was like, wait, I think I can do this. Because it was like my level 2 turn, and I had clocked to draw a second finisher and the wind. And I already had a standby in hand. I was about to play with the combo for a turn. And so I was like, well, I don't need to spend any of this money. We can shove up the boys, get the standby combo off, and get ready.
Yeah, and like this is the type of packet. 9 packets is an unreasonable amount of damage. Like you will absolutely die from that.
And listen, bud, if you take the 4, that's an acceptable outcome, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's lose-lose. You know,
Yeah.
If your opponent's coming in for 5 and you're at 2-4, 2-5, 2-6, that's the type of reel that will kill you no matter what. You know, you're gonna get reeled into range where, you know, once you're at 3-2 or 3-3 against a finisher like this, it's kind of over because any cancel will probably kill you and any non-cancel will also kill you. So unless you have God's own luck to cancel all this stuff, then you are going to die from this much damage. So I think that's a reasonable ask in terms of like, what does this deck do? Win at the end game by incinerating you. And so everything else is in service of getting to that.
Right.
Like we want to get to that and we want to drop as many of these things as we can afford and we want to just torch you with damage.
And I think that, to be honest, this standby combo has been putting out what I want. Like, I feel like the only reason that I'm not particularly, like, doing especially well, it's like, I've been playing the deck for a week, but, like, the potential is there. I feel like I'm just getting skill devved sometimes. But it'll set you up. It's Yuki once, but it turns out 1 card in your hand turning into the 2 cards that you need to kill the enemy next turn is a very nice thing.
Yeah, and Standby has always been known for its ability to create sustainable boards and plus you in a way that is a bit more subtle. So let's talk about some of the things that might be problematic for this deck. At the start, what comes to mind for me initially is the standby characters that are going to come out on the board are a little on the soft side.
Oh yeah, for sure. 10-5 full field with hand encore only is not great. We're looking at Alice right now.
It's pretty bog standard.
It's not going to do the job.
Yeah. I think 2/2s are starting to shift away from defensive power in recent prints. Quintuplets has been dealing with this forever, where their 2/2 is very strong on offense and very weak on defense. So I don't think it's totally unreasonable. The issue becomes very little to stand by at 0. Like you just don't want to see it. You know, You definitely don't want to play it. And if it triggers, you're just like, well, I mean, whatever's in there, right?
Yeah, my brainstormer, I guess.
But after that point, we want to see it. Yeah. We want to see it often. And so I don't hate the 2/2-10-5. I think it's totally fine. The bigger issue is the only thing to stand by at 2 is basically finishers or off finishers.
Yeah.
There's kind of a lack of really good supports.
Well, I mean, it's not even that there is a lack of supports that exist. It's just that you don't want to do that. You want to set up your finisher. It's mind-bogglingly expensive. You don't want to pay for this crap. But you don't want to stand by it out in front. It's a 9/5. Like, oh
right.
God.
Right.
That's going to die on the next turn.
So it's not really a standby deck. It's just a deck that's using standby.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to make that distinction that the standby is just a tool we're leveraging so that we can make this really expensive finisher somewhat affordable.
Right, exactly. And speaking of expensive finishers, the other option is the newest one. It's a choice finisher that doesn't resonate with the punch, so you would like take that out of your deck.
Sure, yeah, that package leaves. Right.
Yeah. But it's a choice combo that's on play, check 3, add 1. And on play of climax, pay 2. Ditch 2. Burn 1, burn 2. Or the other way around.
Yeah, it's burn 1, burn 2.
Burn 1, burn 2.
So, this is also a very excellent finisher that will produce lots and lots of packets. I think it's up to taste how you want this to go. I think the Kauriko finisher is better for me because it has...
They're both Kauriko.
The wind finisher.
Sure.
I like it better because, one, it removes counterplay, and there's a lot of counterplay in Weiss right now. So, removing counterplay is a huge deal.
Yeah, screw that.
Yeah. And the second thing is that on-cancel damage is win-win. Where, if the ones hit and everything else blocks with this finisher, it's kind of doomed. But I think this finisher is very reasonable and has a better trigger. So, and a better entering play ability in general, not in specific. Mm-hmm. So, I think you could go with either one and you wouldn't be too disappointed with the outcome if you could triple it. I think triple of either...
I think it's just not tripleable, though. Like ditched is all on climax play.
Yeah,
like ditch 6.
You would need a plussing trigger of some kind on your level 1 in addition to your level 3, and then maybe you could get it, but it would be a huge ask.
And I just don't think Revue has the tools.
Yeah, there are very few decks that can ditch 2 repeatedly. I will say she does replace herself, so it's possible to have six spare cards in hand plus a climax, right? That's not impossible, but it becomes measurably harder over time.
And well, it's not even the hand; it's the stock.
Yeah, so you need
it's all a climax step,
right? So you need 8 stock even if you stand by one of them, which is doable.
Is it 8?
Yes,
it's 6. Pay 2. Pay another 2.
So it'd be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Yeah.
10 for triple, not possible.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. It sucks that so yeah, Kauriko just feels like she has harder rest of the game, much easier end game. Or if you get there and the game is stable, then your opponent is probably doomed.
Right. So that is an option, but I haven't played super much in the set, but it does feel like you kind of tend to just be like, I'm going to spend my stock to get hand, or I'm going to have ways to conserve hand so that I can keep stock. And if you want both, it's asking a little too much for something like the set 3 finisher.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think the deck is very reasonable. I don't think it's going to be winning worlds. But I do think this is the type of deck... I like decks with a plan, and I always have. I don't think you necessarily need to fight for every single board. I don't think you need to contest necessarily every single lane. I think you need to get to the end state of the game with what you need to win. And the better your finisher is, the less you need to give a shit about the rest of the game. And so you're going to see this more and more as finishers become extremely deadly, where...
Gura incoming.
Yes.
Escanor now, all that stuff.
Those two decks are the prime example of... Gura is the most egregious of...
Incoming Hololive 2 Gura.
Yes.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll eventually talk about Gura as it gets closer. It's not that far away now.
Yeah.
But it's the type of deck that absolutely does not care about anything going on in the game. And it's actually, in my opinion, it's a big design mistake. By Bushiroad. But we'll get to it. But suffice it to say, there are a number of finishers in the game that are game plan finishers where they just need to get there. If you're in range and they have what they need, you're going to die. And so they don't give a crap how full your board is. They don't give a crap how full your hand is. or how many resources you have, because it's not relevant to how they win. And so it's important to acknowledge that, like, winning every lane doesn't win you the game. Losing every lane does not lose you the game. There is a resource trade-off for each of those things, and as long as you are able to reach the end state with what your finisher needs to win, you give yourself a chance in the game.
And that's why I like the standby combo, because at 1, you standby out some guy. It's probably the 2/2. You've got soul, you've got enough power, and next turn, you can swing with it. And it doesn't matter how bad your scuff turn is, if one of those lanes is a 10-5 2 soul, I think we can make it work. And now for something completely different. Let's talk about some fun formats.
I'm of the opinion that you have basically 2 downtimes in Weiss. You've got the time after Springfest and the time after Worlds, where you're gonna have a few months between any serious competitive big events, and so you should take that time to decompress. And one of the ways you can do that is some fun formats, and Weiss has got a shit ton of them. So let's talk about a few.
Yeah. If you have the time, the dedication, and just the immense amount of cardboard, you could put together a cube.
Yeah, and shout out to Alex Schiffler from Austin. Mm-hmm. He put together the first cube for Weiss that I'd actually seen, and a pretty good rule set for it. I'll ask him if he can provide that rule set for us, and if he can, I will put it in the YouTube in the description box so that you too could play with a relatively balanced set of cube rules. But it's incredibly fun, and if you're interested in a different way to approach the game, I highly recommend it. But it is a labor of love.
It's a labor of love, which you could ask one of our friends, Jonathan Popa, who put together his own cube before the pandemic, and in recent times has been severely updating it. He has a whole spreadsheet of just all of the cards, balanced for amount of combos, amount of tech, amount of climaxes, the different colors, all of it. And I'm going to be able to playtest it with him again probably sometime in the next 2 months, and that will be interesting. And we can put together a write-up about what that looks like in the description below as well. We can talk to him about it at some point and talk about it more in depth, because I think that cube is very interesting.
Yeah, a lot of it is about rules, like how what rules you use to play the cube will determine the strength and weakness of some things, and a lot of it may be access to cardboard, or how good you are at ascertaining value. There's a completely different set of values that go with drafting in any card game that if you don't do it on a regular basis, you will not be very good at it. And so if you decide to build a cube, don't be surprised if it's scuffed. If you decide to play in a cube and you've never played one before or never done any drafting before, don't be surprised if your deck is scuffed. Because those skills are like any other. They require practice and refinement, and but it is extremely fun. Limited formats are some of my favorite formats for card games. So
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Schiffler's rule set was, but for Jonathan Popa's cube, we ran it like a quick rundown is it was a Highlander format for all the cards.
Typically is. Yeah.
It was a Highlander format, so one of each card, and all traits don't exist. So if a card says, for example, discard on play to look up to 4 cards and add a beast card or a beastman card or something else, it is now any character card.
Oh, well, that's quite insane.
Yeah.
All traits. All cards traits. Have all traits.
All cards have all traits.
That is insane.
But all cards don't have all names.
Right.
So if there are named interactions, you need to draft both.
Right. And so those interactions become much worse.
All climax combos work with all climaxes of the same color.
Okay, yeah, that sounds more reasonable to
me. Yeah.
So you can try to make like climax combos actually work. I think most cube rule sets have something for climax combos.
Exactly.
To manage that. Is it standard deck size?
Yeah, standard deck size.
50 and 8.
50, and I think right now the cube itself is about 3,000, 4,000 cards. Or no, can't be. It's like 400.
Think about how many long boxes it fits in.
That'll
give you a good sign.
Yeah, it's about I think it's about a 420 cube or card list.
So
right
you need to build the cube up
something.
to be you need to build the cube up to be big enough to where you don't see the same cards every single draft.
It's definitely pretty large. It has cards from like Konosuba, P5. I've donated like a bunch of Bofuri cards now. There's some Kobayashi cards in there now. There's just a lot of different stuff, old and new. It's a very interesting cube.
Well, so cube is awesome, but if you want to play something that's a little easier to orchestrate, all the same side formats that work in other card games will work for Weiss. Highlander does work for Weiss, and it requires
it's very interesting.
It requires a lot of unique deck building in a way that's fun, because there's no way to just jam 3 of something down your opponent's throat. So you have to really get flexible on what you're going to run and trying to make it as coherent as possible. Some sets have advantage by having bigger card pools. Some, have better card pools, but it's always going to be... The variance in the game is going to be much, much higher. And then, of course, pauper formats like perhaps no double Rs, or something like that.
No rares and above would be a very interesting.
No rares would be
build.
very hard.
That would be very. I don't remember how many sets actually have climax combos that plus like at uncommon and common.
The even bigger issue is finding level 3s to run.
Yeah, level 3s as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So there just aren't enough common and uncommon level 3s to even field a deck for a lot of sets. So no double Rs is what I would consider to be a pauper format. That is going to leave you high and dry on your best combos probably for most sets. And it's going to cut you off from probably your best zero utility characters. So it's much more challenging to build and play in those sort of setups. So those formats, obviously very fun.
And I think the last thing we wanted to cover, it's something that we almost started in the DFW area, but I think it was either COVID or just something else came up that maybe it was like a regional season and we're just like, okay, we don't feel like dealing with this right now. We don't want to do it. There's not enough people, so on and so forth. We came up with the idea for a Fate Master Servant cross-local battle.
Yeah.
Where each player would have 3 command seals, and you would try to fight the other players in the area for it, and your deck had to be 1 master, 1 servant.
Yeah, and I think there's I don't know. I'm a huge Fate fan, tons of Fate cards, so obviously I'm ready to rock when it comes to something like that.
Yeah.
But you can do this with a number of other sets where you can do either lore reenactment or you can battle them like, everybody takes 1 Quint girl. Let's let's fight to see who's the best.
And it turns out to be Nino. We know.
You never know.
You never know, sure.
Or you could do the exact same thing with a number of other sets where you take your characters and you reenact part of the show, or some of the battles from the show. Like you could take the Alicization cards, you could make the Administrator deck versus the Kirito deck versus the whatever. I think
and the always classic waifu decks, right?
Yes, of course. And I think that those are just variations on a theme, but the basic theme is the same. We got our girl, and we're gonna do the best we can. Usually, there's a little bit of rule finagling so that the deck will stay functional, and that so you can enable your waifu to the best of your ability. But very common, fun format for Weiss. I love it. Everybody loves it. So yeah. I think if
you try to convince the boy, you try to convince the homies. Maybe one night we can do a waifu husbando local.
Yeah, and I think it's important to get in, and experiment with some stuff that you normally don't play with, because ultimately when it comes back around to competitive season, you're gonna be probably grinding hard, playing the same sort of matchups repeatedly, and you're gonna wish that you had taken that little break and stretched some of those muscles a little bit of the sets cards that you don't even look at. So
I will say that the Kobayashi prices for all Elma foils have gone down significantly since release. I was able to pick up a healer OFR for $30 the other day, and the triple rare climaxes for $5 a piece. So my max rarity Elma waifu deck is coming in hot.
Yeah, I think that that's another great point, is that it gives you a chance to do a little flexing, which we all love. But yeah,
shout out to whenever you listen to this, shout out to you. You have the max rarity FGO set 1 deck worth, I think we stopped thinking about how much it was worth. The last time we thought about it, it was around $5,000.
Oh, well, yeah. And there's so much flexing that goes on, with the price of cards nowadays. But but yeah, we have a number of max rarity and waifu type players in our area, and I'm sure you have some in yours. So
it's the season.
Yeah,
bring them out.
Absolutely. Like, when will there be a better time to show your devotion and to play a little bit of, a little more casual Weiss, Remember that we got into this game for fun.
We did get into this game for fun, and that's our show for today. So tune in next time after your next deck out, and don't forget to take the refresh point.